of the task force, my fellow board members, Christian, Toronto Community Housing staff, a variety of staff are all here. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you all for being here. I'm Mike Purvis, Chairman of the Board of Toronto Community Housing Corporation. I'd like to acknowledge some special guests that are here. Blake Hutchinson, Mohammed, and Phil Gillies from the task force. Deputy City Manager Giuliano Carboni, Deputy Toronto Fire Divisional Chief Jim Stoops, I know how you do, Jim. From our partners, John Daniels, the Daniels Corporation himself has come here, one of the great founders of this great community. Mitch Cohen and Martin Blake from his company. Howard Cohen from Context is here, I believe. Sean Fleming is here. Is Sean Fleming here? Frank Giannoni from Fram is here. From Tridel, Steve Daniels, not from Daniels, but another Daniels. And Andrew Delzo from Tridel is here as well. Thank you. For our private sector partners, Michael Bartlett and Peter Miller from the MLSE Foundation, and Robert Mitchell from the Jays Care Foundation. Thank you very much. And I'd like to just note that the Jays Care Foundation will be able to donate more money to our funds next year because of the increased attendance of usually games. So all of us are a benefit from the Blue Jays doing well this year. Thank you very, very much.
And tenants from social housing as well.
All of us will benefit.
Tenants.
And you, Miguel, will.
Thank you.
Paul Bruce from COTA is here. Some of our labor representatives are here. I think over here, I see you over there. And thank you for all of being here. We appreciate your support. The Mayor's Task Force submitted its interim report to Mayor Tory 57 days ago. The report called for Toronto Community Housing to make action plans in 60 days to address some of the immediate issues raised by residents. Toronto Community Housing has responded to this challenge, and we bring forward today a robust set of action plans for making our community safer, improving the conditions of our buildings, connecting more residents to jobs and opportunities, and delivering better customer service. These are a work in progress. The action plans will align with our support and our strategic priorities for quality homes, vibrant communities, and excellence in service. These are all goals that were identified and approved by the Board of Directors. Now, each of the action plan responds to considerations and recommendations of the task force in its interim report. There were 7 of them, and we hope these will move forward and deliver real change. Some of them have been contemplated for some time, some of them are new from the task force. We want to thank the task force in that. Toronto Community Housing's ability to deliver on these programs is constrained. We need to secure long-term sustainable funding for our capital repairs buildings. We've heard that, but it's one of our constraints. There's a continued need for organizational stability. We can continue to build on the progress that's already been made over the last 18 months, driven by our board and our internal team, but we need to move towards stability. There's a need for a new model, and I believe the government's decisions can be dealt with the task force, that addresses unfunded expectations that City Council and people of Toronto will place in Toronto community housing. Just as an aside, an unfunded expectation, speaking with Greg this morning about the elevator repair need at Toronto community housing. One of our unfunded expectations, we came up with a fact this morning, there's 25,000 calls a year to the call center of a non-emergency basis from people in an elevator. Lonely people in an elevator, 25,000 times a year, pick up the phone and know that there's someone on the other end of that phone. These are the things that Toronto Community Housing is very deals with. These are the sort of unfunded expectations beyond the landlord that we have to deal with. We're looking for the best ways to integrate services in the City of Toronto to solve those sorts of problems. Toronto Community Housing looks forward to making noticeable improvements for its residents by the end of the year. as the mayor and the task force have asked us to do. The action plans lay out a path toward a lasting approach of tackling the significant and complex issues facing the corporation. These issues face the corporation every day. The plans are quite clear about the other partners and essentially getting the work done. Toronto Community Housing will continue to provide support to the task force as it undertakes the second phase of its mandate. We look forward to the task force final report in December. With that, I'd like to thank the task force for bringing the focus on improving the need and the urgency for the improved service of our residents. I'd like to thank the staff who worked on the action plans and bringing this forward to the task force at this point in time. And I'd like to thank all of you for being here. Now I'd like to ask Ray Spear to come forward and describe the action plans accordingly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mayor Tory and members of the Mayor's Task Force for your support. In its interim report, the Task Force gave us 60 days to develop action plans that will deliver noticeable improvements in safety and security, building conditions, jobs and opportunities for residents, and customer service. The Task Force singled out these areas because they are the big ones, the ones residents notice every day, and the ones where improvements will make the biggest difference. Since day one, we have been glad that Mayor Tory called for this task force. This task force is shedding light on all the work that has been going on at Toronto Community Housing and the real challenges that we face. And most importantly, they are helping to drive lasting solutions. I am hopeful that their work this fall will bring solutions to the fundamental problems facing us, which is a lack of sufficient resources to keep our buildings maintained and provide the supports that Toronto Community Housing residents need. It's no secret, Toronto Community Housing has been through some turbulent years. We've seen 4 CEOs since 2010, a whole new board in 2011, the departure of dozens of senior managers, and a number of investigations, reports, and legacy issues that had to be dealt with. But as the Chair noted in his remarks, with support from the board and the city, over the past 18 months this company has first stabilized and then moved forward. We have been pushing hard to improve our housing and our services to our residents. Some of the initiatives in our report are already in place. For example, 60 new cleaners started work in August, including 25 in high-needs buildings. We formed a new partnership with Toronto Crime Stoppers to educate residents about reporting crime anonymously. Our pest management strategy is making dramatic improvements for residents. Treatment volumes are up, while costs and the number of needed treatments are both down. To support economic opportunities for residents, we changed our processes to allow direct awards to resident-led businesses of contracts under $100,000. In fact, we've had a lot of plans in the works for some time, particularly programs and supports for residents, but we need funding to do them. You see, we only get funding from the city to be a landlord, but City Council and the people of Toronto expect Toronto Community Housing to be much more than a landlord. This is a constant tension we deal with every day. The balance between spending money to make critical and long overdue capital repairs to our buildings, or using money to provide critical and sorely needed services and supports for residents. One of the realities emerging from the work of the task force is that City Council and the provincial government need to agree on a new funding model for the services and supports that Toronto Community Housing residents need. We call the report we are releasing today, Getting It Done, Real Change at Toronto Community Housing, because we mean it and because it's true. Among other things, it demonstrates what we are about as a company. It shows we have the expertise and the vision to deliver real change for residents, provided we have the resources and organizational stability to see these plans through. I believe the Mayor, the task force, and others recognize this and will extend their support to help us break through long-standing barriers and get the right partners to the table. Some of the solutions in our action plans are straightforward. Others will be harder fixes to make. One of the most important things we have to do is work with residents as our partners to make many of these improvements. We will get this done. We will start many of the action items now by reallocating current resources. Where new funding is needed, we will develop business cases and bring them forward in our 2016 internal budget process or directly to the city or to the task force in its second half of its work to look for new resources. There are many more improvements residents will notice this year. We will have 18 additional community patrol officers on the ground. Our officers will be spending more time in communities, building more trust and rapport with residents, and conducting safety audits in 10 communities with major safety needs. 521 of our 5,500 security cameras will be upgraded to full digital, with 50 additional cameras installed in 17 communities. Elevator service will improve through a range of measures. We've already started work to replace 19 aging elevators, including 17 in 5 high-needs buildings. Maintenance repairs will get done faster because a centralized dispatch, staffed by superintendents who know their stuff, will send out the best vendor to do the work and do it right the first time. 10,000 residents will get a phone call after repairs are done in their homes this year under the expanded Closing the Loop program, asking for feedback so we can continuously get better at our work. The 1,200 RGI households that pay for their own electric heat will get financial support this year from us this winter as we work on a long-term solution for next winter. An enhanced evictions for cause procedure will help us more aggressively pursue evictions of those who commit serious crimes on our properties. Customer service standards and the principles of a resident charter, jointly defined with resident input, will be developed before the end of this year. We will complete consultations with residents on a long-delayed process to renew the way we engage residents in decision-making about their communities and about improved service. We will bring the findings to our board in December, truly drawing on the strengths and insights of our residents. And there's more. If we can secure new funding support through our 2016 budget process, either directly from the city, through partnerships, or a fully funded capital repair plan, we will hire 94 new community safety unit staff beginning in June of 2016. We will upgrade all of our building security systems and our 5,500 CCTV cameras. We will replace the 140 elevators in most urgent need of replacement before the end of 2018. We will hire more community service coordinators who work hard to connect vulnerable residents with excessive clutter and vulnerability issues to the supports that they need. We will work with private sector partners to re-energize 11 existing facilities and transform them into community hubs at locations across the city. By the end of the year, we want residents to experience cleaner buildings, faster response times when they call the Client Care Center, more reliable elevator service, community safety unit officers more visible in their communities, improved building security systems, more opportunities for jobs and training, and more courteous and respectful service. We will deliver. We have detailed metrics and targets that will clearly mark our progress, and we will be reporting regularly and publicly to our board of directors. To conclude, I would like to acknowledge and thank our employees. 4 interdivisional teams and close to 100 team members did a tremendous amount of hard work over the summer to put these plans together. And the work of our dedicated and committed frontline staff are the ones that will make these plans a success. They will have the unqualified support of their executive team as these action plans are translated into real results. Our Getting It Done report builds on our strengths as a company to change and improve how we deliver services to residents, how we collaborate with residents as our partners, and how we provide real value to the people of this city. I'm proud to be here on behalf of our leadership team and our employees to present our Getting It Done report to Mayor Tory and the task force with, I might add, a couple of days to spare. This is real change at Toronto Community Housing. Thank you.
I'd like to ask the 2 members of the task force, the mayor and Mayor Tory, to come forward. And if you could, we'll present to you, Greg, and I will present to you. You will present to us. Mayor Tory?
Bud and Greg and ladies and gentlemen, members of the task force in particular, and I didn't see it on my way in because we kind of rushed in, but I think Deputy Mayor McConnell is in us. Yes, no? And Councilor Anna Bylaw?
No?
Okay, well, they're not here, but they certainly have been very, very interested in this as we've gone through. And I just want to start off by saying that I also am just delighted that some people I consider to be real city builders are here. There's a number of them connected with, I'm going to mention them as we go through today, but some of them are people who have not just had to do with the physical building of the city, but have really helped us to build a stronger community. Before I was in public life, when I in fact was devoting myself to city building as a volunteer as well, and they really have made an extraordinary contribution. And I want to thank the staff from the executives down through the board and the people who work on the front lines of Toronto Community Housing who were involved in helping us to put together, helping you to put together these plans that have now been presented to me. I'm a huge believer in deadlines, and I'm a huge believer in accountability. I grew up in my business career and my law career understanding that you had to be accountable for what you said you were going to do, and that meant meeting deadlines and actually getting some things done. And I was enthusiastic about the fact there was a 60-day time table put forward to get these action plans brought forward so that we could then know that within a reasonable period of time we'd actually see how the corporation itself would respond to the work of the task force. And I think with a couple of days to spare, that has been done. And I'm not only impressed with the fact there is a plan, but that as I would expect to be the case, and I will expect it going forward, some of the things have begun to be implemented. You don't have to wait for press conferences or board meetings to do things that make sense. And the corporation has not done that. They've proceeded to implement some of these things, and I'm very happy about that. You know, the bottom line is, I spent a lot of time going around to the Toronto Community Housing developments, both before I was a candidate, when I was a candidate, and now since I've been the mayor, most recently last week. And people talk to me about pretty basic things that I accept pretty readily as to their needs. They want a clean place to live. They want a safe place to live. They want to know that the landlord, as any other tenant, should have the right to know is going to respond to their concerns in a timely fashion. They want to know that pests and things like that are going to be dealt with. They want to know that they can get up the elevator to get to their apartment and so on. And these are pretty basic things. When I was in Fir Grove last week, what did they ask me for there? Nothing complicated. The men and women who spoke to me there, most of them spoke about, could you please just get somebody to steam clean the hallway in my building? That was it. I mean, they weren't saying to me, could you rebuild the building next week, or could you give me an apartment that's 3 times as big? They weren't. They were asking about basic things any other residents of Toronto would ask about who were living in different kinds of circumstances. So I think we're beginning to address that, and there's going to be accountability going forward for that. And I say that in the most positive way, and I think that's welcomed by the Toronto Community Housing people. I can tell that when the deadlines are set and when the challenge is put in front of them, they respond. And while I've been among those who've joined in criticism from time to time about some things that have not gone right over here, I will say that when it has come to this exercise and participating in and cooperating with the task force, and now most importantly beginning the process of responding to the task force's first set of recommendations, this has been well done by this corporation. And I want to commend the executive and the board and the staff. In particular, Greg said there were 100 people involved, and I believe it. In looking at these plans, I've read them. And I just want to say that that is a job well done. It marks a beginning and not an end. But having said all that, it's a very, very good start. And I think that when praise is deserved, it should be delivered. And certainly coming from me, I can say that I'm very impressed and happy with the progress that's been made so far. This is all about providing a basic standard of living for some of our most vulnerable citizens. Living in a clean home, as I said, having a safe place to live, feeling safe in your community. These are the basic kinds of standards that most Torontonians live within every day and certainly have the right to expect. And I think that people in Toronto Community Housing have not lived in those circumstances and have somehow been led to believe they don't have the right to expect that from the rest of it. And they have to contribute to it too. And I'm going wildly off script here, but I'll get in some trouble with somebody for that. But when I read that there are $2.4 million worth of false alarms that go off every year, we can do all the planning you want. There's a recommendation there to put a cover on the fire alarm so that when you pull the cover down to set the alarm off, that sets off an alarm first. It might scare the people away. Well, you know what? It'll work for some of the people, but it won't work for other people. They're going to have to change their behavior. And that's important too, because those false alarms cost a lot of money and cause a lot of disruption in the fire service and frankly for the other people living in the building. So we need to do better on a lot of these things, but I think it starts with some of the changes that we can make through our corporation. And there's more fundamental change that's going to need to be made, and those are things that are being examined now by the task force in the second phase of its work that have to do with the sort of management and structure and operation and financing of the housing corporation. And I can tell you, I have asked Senator Eggleton and the members of the task force to be bold and to resist the urge for kind of caution and an overabundance of political correctness in making any recommendation they think will work to provide us with a better structure, better financing, so that we can have a better run and better financed housing corporation. And I'm very hopeful that when that report comes, it will similarly be something that is practical and implementable and doable in fairly short order. So we're started on fixing something that is broken. And it's been broken for some time, and it's in need of being fixed, and I think this stuff today represents a very good start. And I want to just mention a few words on the three areas that I talked about when we were here to receive Senator Eggleton's report. Safety and security. Everybody without exception in this city has the right to feel and to be safe and secure in their homes. And I think that when it comes to Toronto community housing communities, we have not been doing our best working with the residents and with others to make sure that goal is met. In particular, I talked the last time, and I will again, about the constant unwelcoming and threatening presence of people who are involved in the drug and gun trade. And this is like a cancer on community housing. Those few people who want to do that sort of thing set among the majority who are just trying to get by in their lives, just trying to rebuild their lives. And so I think we need to make it easier to cut this cancer out of our homes and our communities. And the action plans have laid out some things we can do in the short term. But again, we're going to require some of the cooperation and assistance of other governments to change laws, and of the tenants, the residents. I know it's not them, but I was told when I was at Fir Grove again last week that they just put new cameras there, and within days they were spray painted over. That is not the police doing that, and that is not, it is people who have reason to want to spray paint those cameras. And that causes a massive waste of money, and it also, more importantly than the money, just doesn't allow us to have those communities be safe. But I think the steps taken today to deploy in a different way the police officers, to deploy more of them, is a huge step forward. I think we've seen that the community policing model has worked well for the Toronto Police Service, and I think there's no reason to believe that properly directed and properly resourced that can't happen as well when it comes to the community housing police. They will be getting out of their cars to a greater extent and having their boots on the ground and being with the people and talking to the people and getting to know the people. And this is hugely important because they will build real relationships with the people, the vast majority of whom are there to live their lives and build their lives, and the small minority of which they will quickly identify who aren't. When we talk about ridding these communities of these bad actors, I recognize that there have been rules and procedures and laws that have frankly handcuffed everybody from actually coming to grips with this. And the action plan contains recommended legislative changes that I've already talked to the Premier about, and that I will continue to talk to her about now that we have more specific suggestions in mind with respect to changes that could be made. Greater powers of eviction are longer term, but I see them as a critical component to keep tenants of Toronto community housing safe, and I have specifically and directly, one-on-one, raised that with the Premier and said to her that I think maybe there is a need to re-examine some of these laws in this particular area. I think most residents of Toronto would agree with me. That is that if you use precious public housing as a base for gun dealing or drug dealing, you forfeit the right to live there. And that we have to find ways, and it's not easy, to make sure that people who do that are not people that are going to upset and I think frankly abuse the opportunity to have that housing provided for them. Building conditions was second. I've made visits, as I've said, to these buildings, and a lot of it is minor repairs and minor maintenance as opposed to the major repair list that we know all too well. These action plans do contain short-term and longer-term measures to address quite specifically these things. I talked about elevators 60 days ago, and I'm very pleased to see in these action plans that we have specific measures to address the things I talked about, accelerating the repairs and replacement of elevators and making more readily available the status of those repairs to the people who are affected by that. And those things are being done, and beyond that, other things that I know were going to be addressed, a thing that makes perfect sense to me and that goes on with our cars and various other things that we have in life. There's now going to be a piece of software used to monitor the elevators while they're working, because oftentimes you can see when they're starting to deteriorate and know in advance that it's time to go fix them before they completely break down. And I think this is a huge step forward. 24/7 access by the elevator repair people to the buildings. We live in a 24/7 world, and certainly when it comes to elevators, they don't know when it's day and night. And nor do they know when people really need to get upstairs at 3 o'clock in the morning, and if they can come fix the elevator at 3 o'clock in the morning, so it's working at 4, then that's exactly what they should be able to do, and that just makes sense that it's being done. So I think that a lot of this is a step forward when it comes to building repairs. Cleaning. I'd like to hope that the people at Firgrove that I saw when I was there last week can count on somebody coming to clean up the hallways they talked about, because we have begun the process of better resourcing that area with 60 new cleaners, and they're already there, they're in place, so we're not having to say, well, that'll be done in 6 months, or we'll study it after next year's budget. To their credit, the corporation have gone ahead and done that. It's a 25% increase. It's not going to solve the entire problem, but I think it's going to make a difference, and I'm happy about that. And finally, I talked last day, and I want to just mention a word about jobs. We have to be careful to make sure that the Housing Corporation can focus on its principal mandate, which is to provide that safe, well-maintained housing for people, but at the same time, as the chair said, and as the CEO said as well, people have a greater expectation of Toronto Community Housing because it is an agency that is helping some of our most marginalized people. And I think that the commitment that I find in these action plans will have to come with some help, financial help, like a lot of these things, to work with the unions like 416 and 79 and others to build on what's been done. You look at the figures of what's been done. It's not something that's a sort of a myth or some kind of a dream. We've actually created hundreds of jobs in connection with this very project. We're here this afternoon and elsewhere. And it's just a matter of will, and it's a matter of making sure that we take every opportunity we get, not just to create jobs, but I think even as importantly to use programs like the Hammerheads program and so on to get people training so that they can go and work somewhere else, if that's what they wish to do. Supporting businesses that are tenant-led or that are local in some of our projects and we do these repairs and so on. Again, in the report, there's a commitment there that I think just makes sense, and we've seen when we've done it before, that makes a positive difference. So I think what we've done is we've just begun, and that's all we've done. We've just begun a focus back on the people who live in these buildings, which is where the focus should be. And I think the more we can do to sort of keep other issues out of debate because they don't exist, and focus on the people who live in the buildings, their safety, the maintenance of the buildings that they live in, and all the things that we've been talking about today, we will be able to give to the tenants and really provide what the people of Toronto expect us to do in the context of housing. I'll say one last thing before saying thank you one more time, and that is that the other levels of government are not going to be off the hook on this, and I want to assure you that I haven't yet been in a position where I can tell you that we've had huge results, although I will say thanks to the work of this task force and some persistence with the federal government, the measure that was contained in the budget has allowed us to produce a couple $100 million, we can't quantify it exactly yet, that will come from some of the changes that were made about the mortgage penalties and allowing us to refinance properly. And that's helped, but there's much more that has to be done by these other governments to help us with this. And I am raising it every opportunity I get with every politician from those governments that I confront or that I come across, and I'll continue to do that. And I believe that we're going to get some more answers as time goes forward, just based on some of those conversations. Maybe they're just getting tired of hearing asked about it, but if that's what it takes, then that's not a problem. So just finally, I want to conclude again by saying thank you to the task force. 2 of its members are here. Senator Eggleton, not atypically, is giving a talk about poverty reduction in Pembroke today, and it just was scheduled on the same day that this ended up being scheduled. And so he's shown particular determined leadership, and all of the task force members, I remind you, are volunteers. So they've given huge amounts of their time, especially the senator, who, while he's a senator, he didn't have to take this on, and he agreed to do it because he genuinely cares about it, and he's put himself into it, absolutely 100%. And everybody on the task force has been aided by Phil Gillies, who's also worked very hard. And I will just say that I renew and refresh today, here, a few weeks later, 57 days later, my commitment to the residents of Toronto Community Housing and to the people of Toronto, because this is our asset, and these are our fellow citizens and our neighbors, and I think people expect in the city that we will provide that safe housing that is well maintained and that people are properly looked after, and I think that they have reason to believe that this is a good step forward today to get where we need to be. So I'll say thank you very much, and turn it back over to the chair.
Mr. Mayor, I think precious public housing is a great phrase, and I think we're going to start using that some more. Thank you very much. I think we get it. And I'm very proud to have you as our mayor in this charge. That concludes the formal part of the conversation. We will have some Q&A. I believe we're going to moderate the press. So I would like to thank you all, the rest of you, for coming out and take questions from the press. If we could, Blake and the mayor and Greg, we could be ready to field questions from the press, and we could moderate the.
Yes, so those will be questions for the media. Tenants have questions afterwards, the mayor can speak to the side, but we're trying to make sure that our.
It's okay, I can photobomb sitting right here if I get so inclined.
This is what we see all the time. So
I'm so tempted to ask a question.
I might as well start. Mayor Tory, what do you say from Toronto Community Housing spending over 13 million, or asking for over $13 million next year to put this plan in place?
Well, I'll be responding to Toronto Community Housing. It would be rare that you'd see it done in public in this way, but because I'm taking the same approach with respect to every agency in the government and every other part of the government, I have no hesitation in saying what I think is going home. There are lots of people asking for $13 million, $23 million, $100 million, and I'm saying to them, well, we'll take a look at what all those requests are, but we'll also be asking you to come back and tell us how many dollars that you can find in the operations of this agency or that part of the government or whatever that are coming from improved ways in which we do business and so on, so that we can take a look at those requests, but also make sure that we can look the taxpayers in the eye and the citizens of Toronto and say we're doing the best with existing funds. And so I know that they're at work on that. Even some of the things we're talking about today will ultimately have a net benefit in terms of reducing costs on these things like the elevators and the fire alarms and that. What did you mention earlier? You made mention of something in your remarks, right? I think there's a cost center and huge numbers of calls to the call center. They cost several dollars each, so if we could cut down by better maintaining the building. So I will just say this. I am, determined to look at increased investment where it's necessary, especially on the capital side, to replace elevators. You can't get around that spending. We've got into the trouble we're in by not making those investments. But at the same time, I'll be expecting the Housing Corporation and every other part of the government to do better with what they have. I could go through chapter and verse on things I found when I got here that are just not acceptable in terms of metrics that would be, you'd see, I don't mean housing, but I mean in the government generally, and we've got to work at changing those.
Can I just ask a follow-up? They talk a lot about resident engagement and getting really involved with residents, yet Toronto Community Housing continues to refuse to put its staff directory online. The city's staff directory is online. What do you think about that?
Well, I've answered questions to you and others before by saying that I believe in the maximum possible amount of transparency when it comes to public bodies, because I think those are financed by people's taxes, and as a result, and they serve the people. So I'm sure there are reasons why you may not want to put every single person's name on. I don't know, but I would certainly like to see steps taken in the direction of making more names and more contact points available. Telephone, is one way people can reach those in positions of responsibility in these public offices, but I think even better than that is in person. And we should be getting more, and some of what's being done now with people being back on the ground and more in the communities and so on is going to take a step in that direction. In some respects, I find even myself, I can see people, I met somebody on the way out of my office to come here who was in my office with a concern about Toronto Community Housing. And, my speaking to her directly was second best only to my being in her neighborhood where she could actually take and show me what the problem was. And so I think the more we can have that, the better. But I think certainly increased transparency is to be called for. And I'll say this, I don't want to embarrass my friends from Toronto Community Housing, but when I came to the city government, I was surprised at the degree to which in several places in the city government, especially in some of the corporations that were at arm's length, there was a different standard of transparency than there was in the city government itself. And that applied to sort of, and others than just here, not just here at all, but there was differences in terms of when board minutes and agendas were made available and what the city standard was and what their standard was, and phone directories and financial numbers and so on. We've got to get to a consistent standard. These assets belong to the people, and the people have the right to know to the maximum extent possible what's going on and how to get in touch with people. And so we'll try to make progress on that as best we can.
Jamie?
Therefore, as Greg brought up, this is an agency that's gone through, to be a lot of issues in the last number of years, management, vendors, and security. Many reports. Here we have another one again.
Yes.
with a bold title, getting it done, promising big changes. Yet, the biggest issues in the interim report were around safety and security, and we're still asking for legislative changes to get rid of those problem tenants. The report said it can stay 6 to 8 months as it is now. It's asking for 94 new security staff, unfunded in 2016. Can TCA's promise to residents that it'll get it done when there's all of these question marks around improving security, which was the core of Senator's report?
Well, I guess you have to look at the glass as either sort of half full or half empty, and I prefer on most things to look at it as half full. And so let's start with the fact that in this very set of action plans, there are specific things that are being done now. There are more cameras that are committed to as part of next year's program. There are more security officers that are on the street now. And not just on the street, they're in those communities under the new mode of deploying them in a way that is more like community policing. And so there are various steps being taken like that that are actually tangible steps that aren't just some future commitment to action, but rather actions being taken today. And it's one of the reasons I said I was impressed with these action plans, because they don't say, well, we'll get back to you after next year's budget. Now, the two questions, yours and Sue-Ann's, really tie together, because of course some of what is to be financed in the safety and security or elevator replacement area is going to require financing that they presently don't have. And so I am pledging right now on behalf of the council and the city staff to work with them to see if we can find money from within their own resources by running the place better, and to see if we can allocate some funds and get the support from the other governments to finance some of the things that will require some extra money, no question about it. And that's part of what Senator Eggleton is devoting himself to phase 2 of his work, as well as to see if there's a different model that we have to use, or at least explore or try, to make sure that we have the funds for those investments. But I think that there's been a good start made today at doing some things that can be done now. We've identified some legislative changes. I have discussed those in advance with the Premier. I will go and now be quite a squeaky wheel when it comes to seeing if we can get her attention to actually put those changes through. And I think a lot of that will make a big difference.
When you look through this report, a lot of the 70 initiatives that are being put forward, like linking up, something as basic as linking up with Crime Stoppers, or reclogging or retraining initiatives. Is there enough tangible being done that people will notice a change, given the fact that the security piece is still out there? And secondly, as mayor, were you surprised that a lot of these things weren't in place before?
To be candid, I was surprised that some of these things weren't being done. But having said that, I ran a big business at one point in time, and there were a lot of things that people might have found fault with me on in terms of something that should have been done. And so it's always easy to look from the outside and observe that kind of thing. I think the real key is, can we come together here, and I'm prepared to make a commitment that in a public way we will come forward here after a reasonable period of time, perhaps early next year, and do a bit of a checklist on what's in these action plans. And that'll put my feet to the fire to some extent in terms of the support we have to offer and discussions we have to have with the other governments, but also hold these people's feet to the fire, the board and everybody else involved in this. But the bottom line is this. I think there are a lot of things being done that are quite tangible in this report, but we need to have the support of these other governments in order to get all of this done, to make all these investments. We can go ahead and look at the part the city's come up with, both from its initial allocation and the extra sort of money that was identified as a result of the mortgage refinancing and the help that came in directly from the federal government. We can go ahead and allocate some of that money to repairing the elevators, but at the end of the day, we still need all the money we talked about to really bring about the fundamental change that's both in the investments and was always contemplated by the backlog of repairs that existed.
Mayor Tory, one of the issues that has bothered residents going forward is what was mentioned here several times, which is the actual governance of the corporation and being able to find some of those efficiencies. We've heard several mentions now that we could expect big changes to come. Can you just talk about what you are expecting, whether there will be substantial change that residents will be able to benefit from, both financially and having that kind of leadership?
I will only say that the present model is not working. And I think people get fixated on whether it's this CEO or that board or this government or that mayor. And in fact, I think that there's been enough trouble for enough time that you could conclude there's a problem with the fundamental structure and governance and financing of this. And it's not just, again, a matter of not enough money. There's never enough money. But I think I've asked Senator Eggleton quite directly when I asked him to take on the chair of this task force, that beyond this initial work that had to do with the conditions of the communities and so on, and some of the things we could address fairly quickly, to be bold. And and I mentioned that in my remarks, I'm looking forward to, I'm expecting, I'm anticipating, I'll be disappointed if he doesn't make some recommendations that may well be controversial in terms of how we can do this better. And I don't know what I'm talking about. If I knew, I'd write the report myself. But I just know there are better ways to do this, and that we have to get other people involved in order to make this work better than it has, because the present model is broken, and there are no signs that it's fixing itself. And I don't think any one of those kind of, you know, perhaps what was mentioned by somebody, that we've been through all these different CEOs and boards coming and going, should prove to us that you can change CEOs and change boards and move people in and out and elect new mayors. And if you don't actually look at the thing and say, is this actually ever going to work, no matter who's in charge of it, you know, in the present structure, then you're not going to solve it. So I'm looking for some bold ideas, and I'm really hopeful he's going to do that, and I think he will.
Last
He gets
question.
what I've asked him.
Can I just ask you about?
Did you want to comment on that for just a second?
No, I think the one thing that hasn't been said as a task force member is we had a year to sort of look at all these issues: governance, proper financing, public-private partnerships, other areas that may unlock a lot of money and unlock additional value that have not yet been presented. And what we concluded partway through was, let's get to some of the issues that we're calling out for, change sooner than later. And let's do an interim report that, permitted things to get started, as opposed to waiting for all these other structural and mathematical issues to be resolved. And so I think it answers a lot of the questions that have been asked today, and that is, this is an interim report. I don't think any of us want to come forward and say, by the way, we're just recommending spend more money, because I don't think we've done our job if that's the recommendation, because that's not what it was all about. We hope to unlock other ways to save money. We hope to unlock other suggestions for efficiencies. And we think as a package, at the end of the year, we will certainly be disappointed, having given a heck of a lot of time and energy, if we can't come up with a full set of solutions, including governance, including better ways to get at the capital funding. And hopefully the mayor and the task force and the senior executives here can be judged at that point fully, but we just didn't want to wait, and that's what's represented here today.
Mayor Tory.
And we're just going to have the last question, then you will get the very last question. That's probably, I'll look to regret that, but there's somebody else over here that said they had a question, we'll have that one. And then Suzanne. So is there somebody else over here? If not, we'll go right to Suzanne. Okay, go ahead.
Rent arrears.
Pardon me?
Rent arrears.
Yes.
I don't know if the task force intends to deal with it. I didn't see anything in this interim report, but clearly there are some real problems based on what I wrote about today. Man outstanding, $65,000. If that money was found, you'd have money to do all the other things. What do you say?
I only say, if you look at that case as an example, without commenting specifically on that case, he claims there are some repairs that haven't been done, and there's a kind of cumbersome system for getting those repairs done. And I think even things like what is it called? There's a name, a brand name on this business of monitoring how the repairs are done. It's in the report. Closing loop. So you've got to hope something like closing loop can avoid a situation where it seems for 10 years there's been some doubt about whether the repairs have been done or not done, and you were there and saw what was to be seen. By the same token, you have a person here who, in my view, and I am going to comment now on the system because I was appalled at the fact that if the system can be gamed in such a way that anybody can stay in an apartment without paying rent for 10 years, no matter what their story was. I think we have an obligation, the city government, the TCHC and so on, to make the repairs, but at the same time, the notion someone should withhold and be allowed to withhold and stay in their apartment 10 years of rent is preposterous, and I think most people in the city would think that way. And so these are all things we have to fix. This is part of a broken organization. And I'm trying now to provide some support for the organization that certainly is showing to me, beginning to show to me, that they're serious with these action plans. We have another chapter to come in the task force report that's going to look at some more fundamental matters to do with structure and finance. But we've got to get serious. People, can't game the system and live in an apartment for 10 years without paying rent, but nor can the landlord, fall short in terms of either making or not making repairs. They should make the repairs, but then you've got to be able to say to the tenant, okay, that's it, no more gaming the system, pay your rent, or you're out. And the same with, we've got to find ways for people who are repeatedly, running drugs and guns in these communities. It just can't be the case that they can keep coming back, and I think now it's the case they can even get a new apartment if they've been thrown out of the old one for doing the same thing. It's not workable. And people out there, they just value common sense more than anything else, the citizens, and the residents. And so they would see this stuff as being pretty basic common sense. You do the repairs, when the repairs are done, you pay your rent. If you violate the standards by dealing guns and drugs and you're convicted, then you're going to forfeit I think most people in Toronto, almost without exception, would say hallelujah to those standards and say get on with it, Mr. Tory, and get on with it, Tchc. And that's what I hope we can do, is get the things done to get that kind of spirit going here. Thank you all very much.
Mr. Mayor, thank you all for coming out. Thank you to all of our partners who showed interest and support of Toronto Community Housing, our staff, task force. Thank you for the press, and this concludes our function. Thank you.
Oh,
Mr.
they forgot the
Mayor.
residents again.
Thank you.
Anyone looking for a comment from tenants?
Yeah, tenants for social housing. Question? Okay, come on. Go ahead. Recording. Hey, how you doing? Very much. results. There's no funding.
And I'm on the resident community services, so
They were just telling me how they have some funds that might, you know, come available. Yeah, exactly. They were talking about expanding some of the existing programs. So just let me know. I can come and either convincing, well, then I have, I'll give you a card. So in this case, I'll give you my own money directly.
You don't have your new cards yet because you just got the new position.
I just got it Tuesday.
Yeah.
It's brand new.
It's easy.
Okay,
take off, John.
You did? I have not. When did you get my percent? You said you were working on it. Well, I'll find it. Look right now. When I get back, I gotta look on my BlackBerry and make sure I have it.
And if you don't see it, let me know.
Right away.
John Mayotori, can you make sure that next time residents can ask you questions at events like
Maybe
this?
some sort of a town hall event at some stage in the game.
Yeah.
We'll have to schedule it, but then you know, make myself available to the residents. I don't think that's unfair. I'd rather do it neighborhood by neighborhood because I think then you can talk locally about a building that's right in front of you. But the notion of having a meeting like
Would you take an invitation to come to 220 Oak Street?
Well, I mean, I can talk. Look at an invitation, and I've said to you that the principle of doing a town hall meeting, I have no problem.
Okay, thank you. We'll make you an invitation to 220 Oak Street.
Okay, that's it.
You?
Yeah?
Promise?
Yeah, if you send it to us, yeah.
What's your email
I gave
again?
away my card. I'm Alex. I gave away my last card.
Oh, can you write it down in a piece of paper?
Yeah.
Sure. You have a pen, don't you?
I don't have a piece of paper though.
Maybe your friend right here.
Well, if you send it to...
No, okay, hold on. He got a piece of paper.
You send it to me and I'll pass it on and then...
Here, I'll send you. I'll give you the email address for all invitations.
Okay.
Mayor_Tory at Toronto.
I had that one already.
That's good. That's the one.
I have it. Give me something new.
That's a good one.
Give me a name.
The real one.
Give me a name.
My name's Alex.
Okay, put your email address, Alex.
This is how I receive events. If they come into my email, I'll miss them. I swear, I will. I'm not.
Come on, just put your email address.
He's gonna come. He's gonna tell me.
I can CC to you.
All right.
CC to you. Transparency. We're talking about transparency here. Thanks, dude. Alex. What?
Preston.
CH.
RESTON.
Okay, question. Okay, thanks. Well, this concludes another show of Toronto Community Housing Corporation. We just had to wait for the funding. Well, they say that it's coming soon. They're going to hire more cleaners, they're going to hire more staff. We'll see the results. How is it going to happen? We'll see if we really see some changes coming up. Anyway, it was a nice show today. Thank you for coming. See you later.